Hello everybody, welcome to Spiritual Awakening 101. My name is Jerry Yakov and I'm your host. Today we're going to be reading from my spiritual path and a book that's entitled A Course in Miracles. Here's the title. Here's a copy of my book. And the particular section we're going to be reading from is chapter 26, entitled The Transition. And the section is section 2, Many Forms, One Correction. And that's page 544 in the text. Many Forms, One Correction. So just a couple of introductory remarks. When it says many forms, it's referring to the ego's projection of what we seem to see and what we seem to experience. There's a myriad of forms that we perceive and that we experience, and we assign that as cause of our feelings. Whatever I see, whatever I'm experiencing from out there, that is the cause, and I'm at the effect, and my feelings are a result of those stimuli, perceptions, and experiences. A Course in Miracles reverses everything to the truth, and that's that only my ideas and my thoughts projected outward result in what I perceive. So projection makes perception. I don't see it unless I first think about it. And secondly, it writes cause and effect by saying, once I've projected my thoughts out there and I perceive them, they are the effects. They are not the cause of my feelings. If I want to change how I feel about what I'm perceiving, as the Course says, seek not to change the world, but seek to change your thinking or your thoughts or your mind about the world. That's at the level of cause. It's within. And by way of clarification, the mind is not the brain. The brain is part of the body, and both brain and body are controlled by the mind. The mind is a metaphysical apparatus, if you will, that is virtually split. One half of it is ego-driven. The other half is spirit-driven, or Holy Spirit, or Christ, or Buddha. And we are the arbiter or the decider as to which side of the mind gets projected, so to speak, into the world that we experience and perceive. So if I decide to align my thinking with the Holy Spirit in my mind and avoid the ego, then I will see things consistent with love. So the idea that there's many forms, one correction, I've really alluded to the whole idea that many forms come from the ego side of the mind. But the one correction comes from the Holy Spirit or the Buddha or the Tao or the Christ side, the spiritual side of our minds. And we can make that decision at any given moment, which would then be the holy instant, as the Course calls it. And it also says that every meeting is a holy encounter. Well, every meeting is neutral. It's one body seemingly meeting another. However, in my mind, as I'm meeting another and having a meeting, so to speak, I can say, I choose as a decision maker to go to the God center in my mind, the Holy Spirit, the spiritual center, and perceive this person as also a mind, but the right mind, the Christ mind, so that I see a holy brother who is one in the same with me. His interests, her interests are the same as mine, and that's love and forgiveness. My interests are love and forgiveness, to establish the holiness. The holiness is always present anyway. It's a matter of awakening to it. So when I choose my right mind, I am then awakening to the presence of the Holy Spirit and the holy instant that's always within my mind. And that's where joy and freedom and spaciousness exists. And then I represent that to the other person, and we have a holy encounter. Every meeting is a holy encounter. Well, let's see what it says in this section. Many forms, one correction. Paragraph 1. It is not difficult to understand the reasons why you do not ask the Holy Spirit to solve all problems for you. He has not greater difficulty in resolving some than others. Every problem is the same to him, because each one is solved in just the same respect and through the same approach. The aspects that need solving do not change, whatever form the problem seems to take. A problem can appear in many forms, and it will do so while the problem lasts. It serves no purpose to attempt to solve it in a special form. It will recur and then recur again and yet again until it has been answered for all time and will not rise again in any form. And only then are you released from it. So here, the Course in Miracles is referring to the one answer, which is the answer for all time, and that would be making a decision to go into my right mind, mindfully, and seek the holiness and the love and the forgiveness to perceive what I've already projected out there, because the thought precedes the projection and precedes the perception, rather than deciding that I'm going to try and fix things on the outer, the circumstances, the perceptions. And it says here, if you try and attempt to solve it in a special form, it'll recur and recur again and yet again until it is answered for all time, which is that inner decision. Seek not to change the world, but seek to change your mind and your thinking and your thoughts about the world. And that's by aligning with the Holy Spirit, your higher power, the love that you are. It's always that formula, in essence, that we're going to be using throughout this course. And it makes for a consistent, simplified practice. This is a transactional practice where I go out into the world, transactionally experiencing my life, and I'm always presented with lessons. And each lesson presents then a choice. I have to first remember the metaphysics that I must have thought this first because I'm experiencing it. And then secondly, I can change my response and my perception of what I'm experiencing and perceiving by changing my thoughts. This is the power of the mind. There are many disciplines and practices that teach the power of the mind. I like this one particularly, A Course in Miracles, because it says all I have to do is have the willingness to change my mind. And then I give my false perceptions, which are troubling me and are fear-based and ego-based, I give those up to the Holy Spirit, or to Jesus, or to the Tao or the Buddha, whatever, Allah, Krishna, whatever it is that's the essence of truth within your mind. And then I simply wait for the miracle. There's nothing more that I have to do, because there's nothing more that I need to do. It's all been done in the willingness and the decision to turn it over. And to our 12-step friends that are out there and practice the 12 steps, this is the essence of letting go and letting God. The essence of the third and the 11th step, where we turn our will and our lives over to the care of God. And then we're stepping out in faith and knowing that things have to change. Because firstly, they were driven by our ego. We've abdicated our attempt at controlling the world and our ego projections and saying, here, Holy Spirit, here, God, you take it. And I will now rest in your holy arms, and I will experience what it is that you can then create as the miracle for me. And what is the miracle but a shift in my perception from ego fear to spiritual love? And when I see everything lovingly, I'm happy. I feel freedom. I feel peace and serenity. The next paragraph, the Holy Spirit offers you release from every problem that you think you have. They are the same to Him, because each one, regardless of the form it seems to take, is a demand that someone suffer loss and make a sacrifice that you might gain. That would be the ego's resolution of problems. Someone else is to blame. They need to be wrong and sacrifice, and then I'll feel better. And of course that's a mistake. That's a wrong-minded, mindless decision that we do habitually. And we want to train ourselves. This is a mind training course. And what it's training us to do is to let go of the ego thoughts of projecting guilt onto others, because the guilt is within us. Let it go and give it to God, either as the perception of guilt or the acknowledgement that I feel guilty. In either case, we're willing to let it go to the Holy Spirit, who then corrects the guilty thoughts and replaces it with the love. And it's like electricity, and I've said this before, we don't understand the nature of the miracle, but we want to plug into it. because it makes all the difference in the experience of our lives, and more importantly, in the awakening process, where we ultimately abdicate the ego-driven concept of self, and that it's my life, and I want my life to be better. Ultimately, that is not the goal. We have to realize that even defining the problem as my life and my problems is a taking over and a controlling by the ego. The only way to let it go is to realize that I have no problems, and there is text and workbook lessons to that effect. All my problems have been solved. But I am persisting in seeing them as an ego-driven self, small self, and so I keep reviewing the same ontological problem as many different forms of negativity and fear. So the form keeps changing, but the source of it is always my insistence that I'm sinful and guilty. I've separated from God, and as a result of that, I have to hide from this ultimate power of miracles and love and forgiveness, which is the only correction. When we let go of the guilt and we stop hiding from the one correction, which is God, the Spirit, then all else is resolved. And as it says here, you are released from it. So when the situation is worked out so no one loses and the problem is gone because it was an error in perception that now has been corrected, one mistake is not more difficult for the Holy Spirit to bring to truth than is another. For there is but one mistake. The whole idea that loss is possible and could result in gain for anyone. If this were true, then God would be unfair. Sin would be possible, attack justified, and vengeance would be fair. Well, there is only one mistake, and that's the tiny mad idea, as the Course calls it, that we've separated from our Creator, and that we are a individualized, fragmented, subjective ego, and that we have personal problems that are relative to other people's personal problems and stories. And of course, while that's an illusion, the Holy Spirit can use what we have projected and made for ill. The Holy Spirit can transform and transmute into miracles. And the way that the Holy Spirit does that, and I'm not sure of all of the mechanisms, but the way the Holy Spirit does that is by coming into our minds, where it always resides, and shifts our perfection, our perception to love. We see everybody forgivingly and lovingly. And the Course doesn't even attempt to define love, because it's beyond definition. It simply is the essence of who and what we are. God is love, and we are created in the likeness and image of God as love. And the symbol of worldly love is forgiveness, because we are so habitually condemning other people and projecting. So we need the two steps, if you will. We need the forgiveness, the letting go, which transmutes into the essence of love, is what we are. And then we see things lovingly and forgivingly. And that is a state of heaven. That is the state in which we know we're one with our brothers and sisters, and that their interests and ours are the same. It's looking past the form, and it's really experiencing at the deepest soulful level the oneness that we all share as the Christ. God only created the Christ. God only created the Buddha. There's a spaciousness there that is unfolding infinitely, and we want to be part of that unfoldment and that infiniteness. Once we know that we're in that flow of the infinite, then all discrepancies and separations and distinctions which we've made to define the world and our experiences is let go. That's why, you know, the Buddhists say when they sit in meditation, they have an experience of oneness. That's possible through A Course in Miracles, and it doesn't take a lot of time sitting in a posture and meditating. I have nothing against that, and I appreciate the Buddhist way, and I practice it myself. But for me, the transactional miracle of relationships, where they shift from fear to love, is what I find opens up my eyes most quickly. And it's done, of course, in collaboration with choosing as a decision maker the Holy Spirit. That is the essence of love. That was the message of Jesus, of course. Forgive them, they know not what they're doing. And as an addendum to that, it would be forgive them because your perceptions are mistaken. You don't know what you're doing. But there is one who knows. And when you realize that your will and its will, the Godhead's will, is the same, yours and his are one, then you willingly give up all the pain and the suffering as a result of your own perception and ego-driven mindset. And you realize that all there is one correction, despite all the seemingly many forms. Early on in the Course in Miracles, it says that there's no order of difficulty of miracles. That's the first miracle principle. There is no order of difficulty. Why? Well, as it says here, because the Holy Spirit offers you a release from every problem, and they're all the same to him. All expressions of love, which are symbolized in the world as forgiveness, are maximal. God doesn't have incremental love, doesn't have relative love, doesn't have conditional love. All love as an expression is maximal. So when we open up to that, and the floodgates, so to speak, of our minds extend that out, and it comes rushing towards the object of our projection, all miracles are the same. They're all maximal expressions of love. Well, this one mistake, which was the idea that we've separated from our higher power, our Creator, this one mistake in any form has one correction. There is no loss. To think there is a mistake. You have no problems, though you think you have. And yet you could not think so if you saw them vanish one by one, without regard to size, complexity, or place and time, or any attribute which you perceive that makes each one seem different from the rest. Think not the limits you impose on what you see can limit God in any way. Well, this is the point, that we have to withdraw the limits that we've imposed by virtue of thinking we're separate onto God and viewing him with distrust and fear. One of the obstacles to our peace is the fear of God and the kingdom of heaven, because we honestly feel that God is not our friend. God is our judge. God is vengeful. God can be threatening. And God is going to pay us back for the abdication that we've left heaven and we've separated from him. Well, that's all made up. This whole idea of the fall, the expulsion from the garden, the idea that of original sin, or as some churches call it in shorthand, OS, does not exist. It is not true. If you follow the practice of A Course in Miracles and many other forms of spirituality, you realize that your essence is and always will be eternally that of the Christ. You're sinless, you're innocent, you're guiltless. One of the workbook lessons that I quote most often is, I am as God created me. God did not create me sinful. God did not create me with guilt. And as I had mentioned a little bit earlier, all of my projection, which is needless, is based on my deep-seated belief that I am filled with guilt from original sin and separation from God. And so I need to, according to the ego, project all that guilt onto somebody else and blame them, scapegoat them, actually see them as the progenitor of the wrongful act. And the ego then puts me further asleep, so that it's almost a dream within a dream. The first dream is of separation from God. And then the next dream is one of a world of bodies and of fault and victimhood. This is a distinct dream that each one of us is having. And your dream, individualized dream of projection, of fault, and victimhood, seems to be many different forms that are different than my dream of projection and fault and victimhood. But the Holy Spirit doesn't get fooled by that. And it knows that, your dream within the dream of separation is untrue. And so the same solution or correction applies, and that's the forgiving, loving essence of the Christ. Similarly with me, I have to experience that the fault and the victimhood that I'm dreaming, and that I am the victim as a small ego self and beyond my control, really is a wrong-minded decision that I've made, but I can always choose again. And Jesus says at the end of the text, my brother, choose again. Choose to see the world through my eyes and my vision rather than your perception. And when you adopt Christ's vision, then this dream within a dream, you wake up from it. So there's no longer a projection of fault, and you no longer identify as the victim. There is that waking up. And that's what we want to do ultimately, isn't it? We want to have, as the Course says, firstly, a happier dream, because we're not going to wake up all of a sudden. We resist that. It's too much light, and it's too frightening. So the Holy Spirit is gentle and patient. And what happens is that we wake up seemingly in time in a process, and it seems linear. So we're advancing. The truth is that we've already awakened, because God would not allow anything unlike itself to really exist. Early in the introduction to the Course, it says, nothing unreal exists. My wife and I had an interesting conversation last night about that. And if you take it to its logical extension, nothing exists, nothing unreal exists, then what is it that we're practicing here? The Course doesn't exist. Our problems don't exist. He says here, you have no problems. They don't exist. So everything is a thought. Well, my wife came back with, well, your thoughts exist. But the truth is that the ego is false, and it's an illusion. And that there's no hierarchy of illusions. They're illusions. So no matter what the content of your dream as fault and victimhood, or my dream as fault in someone else and victimhood, it doesn't exist. So even the thoughts don't exist. And that's ultimately, and she came to the same conclusion that I did. The Course says we need do nothing, really. All we have to do is make the decision in terms of our learning process, and keep making the decision for the Holy Spirit and our right-mindedness over and over and over again, as often as we can remember. And the more we do it, and the more often that we do it, the more it becomes involuntary. Because we want to have miracles become involuntary. We want it to be our natural, organic, biological state, if you will. And that is the truth. That is who and what we are. We are that process of forgiveness and love until we fully wake up from the initial dream of separation from God, and then God takes us the final step home into heaven, which the Course says we've never left, because nothing happened when you fall asleep and dream. They're all illusions. The content of a dream is an illusion. So what happens then is beyond the scope of the Course. But we do fully wake up. This may be what the Buddhists refer to as nirvana or satori, fully enlightened one. The Buddha fully woke up. Well, we'll have to take that on faith, won't we? Jesus fully woke up. We'll have to take that on faith. And how is the faith then realized and firmly reinforced? In my experience, it's by seeing that my dream is becoming happier and happier. That much I can attest to. I don't fully awaken yet in my own dream to the heaven that I've never left. I don't realize that I'm one in the Christ, and I'm one with the Buddha. Don't forget, the Buddha was just a man. The Buddha was a man, Jesus was just a man. But they were men within the dream, and therefore were only a projection of an image and false and an illusion. But they were here in our dream for a purpose, and that's to represent the awakened one, the Pure Land, the opportunity for the full enlightenment and the awareness of the Godhead. So they represent within the memory of our minds that which is always there. It'll never go out. It's like an eternal flame. It may dim, and it may become very small seemingly to our awareness and our consciousness. But the truth is that once we begin to wake up, it brightens because it's always been there. In the past, I've referred to it as the gravitational pull of the Godhead to all of the created. The created are naturally in a gravitational pull towards the Creator. Why? Because there's an experience of oneness that is inescapable. The Course calls that, this melody from heaven that seems to be playing in the deepest recesses of our mind. And it's a melody that we can't quite remember, but it haunts us. And there is this pull to remember it fully, and then to embrace it, and then to realize that we are it. We are God's song. We're God's expression melodiously of love and light. And so let's read a little bit more. We only have a couple minutes before we finish this section. It says here, you who believe it's safe to give but some miracles to be corrected, while you keep others to yourself, remember this: justice is total. There is no such thing as partial justice. Well, we talked about all expressions of love are maximal. So he says, but ask not God to punish your brother, because you find him guilty and would have him die. God offers you the means to see his innocence. Well, this is the forgiveness that we're talking about. This is the withdrawing of the projection and placing it on the altar within our minds to God, who then takes it up. All we have to do is let go and let God, and then the misperception is removed, and we simply see them with love and with the Christ vision. So, you deny the miracle of justice can be fair, but it is fair because it is the truth and it is really our identity. So consider once again your special function. Well, our function is as the light of the world. Our function is forgiveness as the light of the world. One is given you to see in him his perfect sinless. And that's all our brothers and sisters who make up the sonship. Think then how great your own release will be when you are willing to receive correction for all your problems. Well, the original problem is the idea of separation and the thought of sin, guilt, and fear. And all of that is taken up when we're willing to see our brothers and sisters with the Christ vision. So, this takes us to the end of many forms one correction. As it usually does, it says, for it is not your Father's will that you should offer or receive less than he gave you in creation, when he created you in perfect love. And we are as God created us. And I like to end with that. You are as the Christ. I am as the Christ, and the Buddha and the Tao. We are one. We are as God created us. Shalom, namaste, and peace.